Good morning, Team Alabama. We are ready for Chapter 7 in the Lottery Rose. Please find it on your Chromebook now and begin to read with me. Open your tab that has your 50 facts on it so that we can add to those facts. You can go over 50. Everything that's over 50 is extra credit. Make sure that you have your questions started. If we haven't started those, let's think about questions that we can add today to our questions. Does Steve ever come looking for Georgie? Does Mom ever find him or come back? They said Mom was ill. Does Mom die? Does Judge O'Neill ever come to look for Georgie? Those are all questions that I might be asking at this point in time. Does Mrs. Harper ever get friendly? Okay, page 82, chapter 7. Georgie had two other visitors just before supper time that evening. He had not seen Robin's grandfather since their first meeting that day on the porch. Now suddenly he appeared at the door of Georgie's room, one hand full of thin, brightly colored books, and the other leading Robin. Sister Mary Angela said that you might like to hear a story before you have your supper, he said, laying the books down and shaking Georgie's hand as politely as Timothy had done. Robin wanted to come along. Is that all right with you? Yes, I like Robin. Georgie did not often look pleased, but he smiled at the little boy who looked up at him with wide eyes. How about stories? Do you like them too? Georgie shrugged and his face turned sullen. I don't know any, 'cause I don't know how to read. Well, I'll do the reading while you and Robin listen. I love to read to children. I used to read to Robin's brother Paul every night when he was little. Georgie did not answer. Mr. Collier lifted Robin up beside Georgie, where he sat propped up by the pillows placed at his back. The two boys looked up silently, one face glowering. Okay, glowering might be a word you might want to add. The other seeming to be concerned with something far away. Top of page 83. Mr. Collier looked through the books that he had brought with him and finally selected one about a boy who was in many ways something like Georgie. It was the story of a lonely boy who was treated cruelly by grown-up people, a boy who loved singing but who could sing only when he was alone and when the moon and the woods made the time and the place right for singing. There was suffering in the story, words that brought tears to Georgie's eyes and had to be brushed quickly away before anyone saw them. But at last everything was right because one good person understood the boy and became his friend. As he read, Mr. Collier sat on the bed beside the children and kept the book before them so that they could follow the story with the bright pictures on each page. Georgie sat quietly listening to every word. Once, without thinking of what he was doing, he laid his right arm around Robin's shoulders. He noticed that Mr. Collier's voice shook a little at that moment, but very quickly became deep and strong again. And when the story was finished, the grandfather closed the book and stretched his arms out towards Robin. We must be going now, Georgie. Rosita will scold me if I keep Robin out beyond his supper time. He stopped at the door and turned to face Georgie again. By the way, we gave your rosebush a drink of water as we came over. Old Eddie walked down to the gate with us, and he said to tell you that your rosebush looks healthy. He thinks it's going to grow well. I'm going to see it tomorrow, Georgie told him. Sister promised me that I could. Good. I think it will be glad. No, not just glad. I think it will be very happy to see you. I've read somewhere that roses are particularly sensitive flowers. What's sensitive? A sensitive person or flower understands how other people feel. They're sad when someone else is sad, happy when someone else is happy. And if that is true, your rosebush will understand how happy you are tomorrow. Sensitive? Georgie whispered the word himself. A rose is sensitive? He liked the new word. Mr. Collier loosed his hold on the pile of books he held, and one of them slid to the floor. Georgie noticed that it was the one about the lonely boy who loved to sing, and he put out his hand and he pointed towards it. Can I keep that one? I'll be careful. All at once he was terribly eager to hold and look at that book. Of course, Georgie. Do you want to look at the pictures? I might try to read it, Georgie answered. I might learn myself to read it out loud to Robin and my rosebush. He took the book from Mr. Collier. "Look, I learned some of the words while you was reading." He ran his fingers along a line. "The boy was standing in the moonlight woods," he read, and looked up at Mr. Collier proudly. The man looked at the line Georgie read, and only one word was wrong. The sentence read, "The boy was standing in the moonlit woods." "I know some of it already, don't I?" Georgie asked eagerly. "Yes, you do, Georgie," Mr. Collier said slowly. "I wonder, maybe you are ready to read, and no one has ever realized it. Maybe you wanted to read this story because you liked it better than the ones in your school books." "Books in school are crap," Georgie answered shortly. "And long rows of words that you have to say without a story, they're crap too. This one is a good story. I'm glad you liked it. This book used to belong to my grandson. He would be about your age if he were living. The book is precious to his mother." Precious might be a word you want to add also. "But I know she'll be happy for you to keep it for a while." Georgie's face changed quickly. "I don't want it if it's hers," he said, closing the book and extending it coldly towards the old man. Mr. Collier looked distressed. "My daughter would want you to keep the book for as long as you need it, Georgie. She would know that, of course, you'd take good care of it." "I don't want her book. I don't like her. And I don't want anything that's hers." "Except a place in her garden for your rose bush," the grandfather reminded him gently. Georgie brushed those words aside. "That don't count," he said evenly. "That garden was the right place, no matter who said she owned it." Mr. Collier smoothed his beard for a minute, and then he laid the books down and lifted Robin back on the bed. "You told me a while ago that you couldn't read, Georgie." "I can't." Georgie barked out the words, forgetting how proud he had been in recognizing a sentence just a short time before. "But you recognized several words just now, didn't you? I think I might be able to teach you to read if we both tried hard." Nobody couldn't teach me to read. I'm dumb." "I don't believe that. I think that you may be a very bright boy who has never had people around him who cared whether he could read or not." Georgie was silent. He was thinking of Miss Cressman, the mean teacher, and of his mother and Steve. Mr. Collier took a paper from his pocket and smoothed out the blank side of it. "Here, I am going to start a story about your rose bush," he said, and hurriedly wrote a couple of sentences. "I'll make it tell the reader who is talking. I am a rose bush who lives in a beautiful Florida garden, and here it says that it belongs to a boy named Georgie who loves flowers more than anything in the world. Now, would you like to add to the story? I'll do the printing for you." The sullen look disappeared from Georgie's face as he sat up straighter. "Say that one time it lived in a grocery store, and say that the numbers that wind it to me went like this: 8662-71-4923. Say that it is sensitive. Say that a man named Old Eddie planted it for me when I was sick and gave it fertilizer and stuff to make it grow." "That's a good story," Mr. Collier said when Georgie hesitated. "And shall I write the names of all the people who are trying to help the rose bush grow healthy and be able to bloom? Here is Georgie, first of all. Next is Sister Mary Angela. Here are Old Eddie and Rosita and Amanda. Here are Robin and his mother. And here I come next," the grandfather winding up the list. He placed the paper in Georgie's hand and read it aloud, his fingers moving along each line, and Georgie's eyes shone with interest as he listened. And then he pushed Mr. Collier's hand aside, and he read the paragraph himself with very little help. However, when he came to the words, "Robin's mother," he stopped short and reached for Mr. Collier's pencil. "We don't need her in the story," he said, drawing a line through the words and then resuming a pleased inspection of the paragraph. So he crossed out Mrs. Harper's name, or Robin's mom. "Put lots of these words in another story and see if I know them," he ordered. And when Mr. Collier had written another paragraph using many of the same phrases, Georgie read it with an ease that amazed both the reader and the teacher. "I'm reading, ain't I?" he asked. And Mr. Collier nodded thoughtfully. We'll find stories that you enjoy hearing, Georgie, and I'll read many, many stories to you. Maybe I can write some for you if you will help me by suggesting things that you'd like to put in them. Do you think that we might work together? Yes. We'll write some easy stories at first so Robin and my rosebush can understand them when I read out loud. And when Mr. Collier left with Robin, going down the corridor towards Sister Mary Angela's office, Georgie rolled his head on the pillow, enjoying the unexpected pleasure of the moment. He felt so much better that he got out of bed and sat in the chair beside the window. Outside, the sky flamed as the sun set, and across the street, the garden lay like a bright picture. The colors glowed with a special light, giving their best before twilight robbed them of their brightness. Georgie believed that he could see the outlines of his bush down beside the big gate. I can read, he whispered, full of wonder at the thought. I can read Rosebush and Sensitive and Fertilizer and Robin just as good as anyone. I can read them in one story and then in another. It wasn't just remembering where a word was, it was real reading. He was examining the paper Mr. Collier had left with him when Sister Mary Angela came in with her supper tray. Sister, I can read,